Hi there. My name is Tane Barzo. I am sitting here in front of the lovely Graduate School of Business at Stanford University, and I'm recording my favorite Clusterfug for the course Scaling Up Without Screwing Up. And that Clusterfug is that of Commodore Business Machines, CBM or Commodore. You may know them as the company who back in the 80s released one of the most popular personal computers of all time, the Commodore 64. At the time, it competed with such machines as the TRS-80. Now, Commodore really peaked around 1982 to 1984. They originally began as a business machines company, so International Business Machines, Commodore Business Machines. They were doing typewriters and adding machines and that type of thing. And in the late 70s, they moved into personal computers. You may have heard of the Commodore PET. It was a 16K machine with large built-in disk drives that you could sort of fit your finger actually into, and a monochrome screen. They were used in some offices and a lot of schools. Well, they afterwards released the VIC-20, a machine that actually had color and you could hook up to your television at home. And then after that, they released the wildly popular Commodore 64. In 1982, they had shipped around 3.4 million of these, and they had really cornered a lot of the market. They had around 30% of the personal computer market at the time. Now, you notice I've mentioned 1984. That's right around the time that Macintosh came about. Apple introduced the Macintosh, and it's right around the time that PC clones started to become popular as well. So competition was really heating up around the personal computer revolution. This is really the time that everything became hot. Well, Commodore, being a business machines company run by people who, if you do a little bit of research, as it turns out, were great at finance, but incredibly awful at marketing, kept moving with their Commodore 64. They redesigned it and re-released it and really kept moving on that cash cow. Well, they did make one smart move, and they developed the Commodore Amiga, which was an amazing machine at the time. It ran on the same 68,000 processor that the Macintosh ran on, and had its own set of custom chips, which essentially allowed it to run rings around any machine that was out at the time. It could display 4,000 colors on a screen, had 640 by 400 resolution. It could sync up with a television signal for Genlock, so you could essentially do motion graphics at the time, and it actually began the desktop video revolution. It was far more advanced than anything at the time, and of course, it failed miserably. Now, granted, it had a huge following in Europe, and it had a rabid fan base, and it sort of slowly trickled into the collective consciousness of the computer world at the time. Unfortunately, it didn't make it. Now, they definitely started it off right. They had glam and glitz that one would certainly attribute to something like Apple Computer today. At the launch in New York, they had famous people such as Debbie Harry, or you may know her as Blondie, and Andy Warhol showing off the amazing things you could do with this machine. Interesting thing about that, though, is that every single time Commodore really grabbed onto some kind of a marketing campaign, they would very quickly pull the plug and say, whoa, we need to do something different. They would keep pushing it. They would find these different reasons. They would put the machine in these sort of niche boutique computer shops, but it just never really made it. The company kind of just left it to languish, and they really moved ahead with the attitude that, look, we have something that's superior. If you don't understand it, that's your problem, but if we build it, they will come. Now, unfortunately, I think it's really been shown, and with the machines and the companies that actually have succeeded and that came out of the dust at that time, that that type of attitude doesn't work. So basically, when the company lost $350 million in 1993, their CEO at the time was making a lot of money, around $1 million compensation. He certainly knew how to move the books for himself. So anyway, they tried. Commodore really tried, and it was too little too late. They created a game console that was essentially just a thinly veiled Amiga at the time. It was just a machine without a keyboard. It had a built-in CD-ROM. They tried to grab onto the CD-ROM revolution. Unfortunately, they're already competing with things such as the PlayStation and the 3DO and the wildly successful game consoles that Nintendo had come out with. So they just kept scraping, they kept screwing up their marketing, and they eventually failed and filed for bankruptcy. And the funny thing is that today you can still go on eBay and find an Amiga and pay more for it than you would have probably paid new. They're still incredibly popular around the retro community. So we talk about illusion, impatience, and incompetence. Their illusion is that running with what they already knew, i.e. finance, and not knowing anything about the computer industry would be okay for them. They were incompetent in the fact that they knew nothing about the computer industry, and they really lacked any type of forward vision about what should be happening in the industry. And they were impatient because they knew absolutely nothing about marketing, and every time they would try something new, they would pull it and never really move forward with a vision. So unfortunately, Commodore, the maker of one of the most powerful computers in history for the time, and something that could have theoretically made it through all the way today, crashed, burned, and disappeared, and now they exist only in old computer magazines and the memories of computer geeks such as myself. And that is my favorite clusterfuck.